Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel Stitches Past 5. My name is Vera and today I am super excited to show you all of the items that I knitted in 2024. I've been really looking forward to making this video. I think it's such a nice way for me to kind of look back on the year and wrap up and just show all the patterns I made. I'll share what yarn I made them, what my experience with the pattern was, and anything that there is to tell about any of the pattern, my experience with them, yeah, some challenges, if it was a good pattern, if it was not my favorite pattern, and so on and so forth. The first thing I want to share are my yearly stats. So in 2024, I made a grand total of 12 sweaters slash cardigans slash tops. So this is anything that's to be worn in the upper body that is not an accessory. And then I also made a total of around 16 accessory, at least the ones I'm going to share here. These include hats, they include gloves, they include socks, and anything else that's kind of small that I've knitted throughout the year, but I'll share all those with you. The order of this video is not going to be in chronological order, but it's actually going to be by category, I guess, because I just thought that makes a little bit more sense, of how to structure this. As always, I will list all of my patterns down below. I'll list the yarns I used, the needle size I used, where I still know it, where I wrote it down, and which size I made for myself. For your reference, I'm usually a European size 36, around there, so I guess it's a US small s, or I guess size 4 or 6 in US as far as I'm aware. And yeah, of course, patterns kind of vary in their sizes, so I'll leave those and I'll include those as well. So let's get right into it. We are going to start with the sweaters that I made this year, and these are in the women's category. So I guess I made some things for my partner as well, but these are the female or the women's sweaters that I made. Okay, so we're gonna start off with this one, which looks like this. There's a yarn sticking out at the top, which is not a great start. But essentially, this is the Step-by-Step sweater by Florence Miller. And this is a, DK weight sweater. I made this in a very old yarn that actually had unraveled from a different project. So I was a little bit nervous about how it's gonna turn out. Yeah, and this one is a top-down raglan sweater. The wool was self-striping, so that's why you see the stripes here, and it is a wool content of 25% polyamide and then 75% wool, because it's actually a sock yarn, but it's a pretty thick sock yarn. This pattern is a free pattern by Florence Miller, and I have to say that I do not wear this, so I'm gonna unravel it. It looks fine, and I like the way it turned out, but it's just a little bit too small for me. I don't remember what size I made this, so I couldn't tell you, but it did just turn out a little bit too tight and a little bit too short because I felt I thought I didn't have more yarn. I've now found more yarn, so I'm gonna unravel this and make a bigger sweater in a different pattern out of this. But I still wanted to include it in here because I guess you live and you learn, and this is just more of the learning process. The pattern in itself was fine. I think there was nothing no big issues with it. It is your basic raglan top-down sweater with a folded collar, but just for me and myself, I will be scrapping this project. I will be unraveling it just because it doesn't fit me, so I don't wear it. But that's not the pattern's fault. That is solely my own fault for making the wrong size. Okay, so moving on to the second sweater that I made for myself this year. It is this one. Let me show you. Ta-da! So this is the Cloud sweater by Kutovakika, as found in her book Knit This. So that was her first book. She's since brought out another book, but this is essentially a bottom-up sweater. It is a drop shoulder sweater, so you can see the drop shoulder where I picked up the stitches here, and it is knitted in double-stranded mohair, and the one I used for the sweater was the Hobbii Kids mohair held double in the middle blue color and the darker blue color. I don't know the names right now. And it turned out like this. So this one I am really happy with. The pattern, I actually altered it quite a lot because it suggested like even more positive ease and even more like bulky, lengthy fit. So I shortened the sweater a lot. And I made it like a size smaller than recommended. So I actually made this in size S, although with my measurements and my positive ease additions, I should have made a size M, but I'm happy that I did. The only thing is that the collar I'm not a big fan of, so I actually ordered some more yarn in order to make like a ribbed collar onto it. And I'm also gonna lengthen the sleeves because as you can see here, I ran out of the yarn, and then the dark blue actually ran a little bit longer, so I finished the sleeve, but I will be undoing that to lengthen the sleeve. Overall, this was a really easy project. I used a 5mm needle, and so it came together pretty quickly. Now I was making this in like late summer, so I wasn't working on it too frequently, but pattern wise and fit wise, I mean, it's a pretty bulky sweater, so there's not too much that can go wrong, I guess. But I'm a fan. The only thing that I can criticize is the like neckline. So yeah. That is the Cloud Sweater by Kutovakika. Okay, now moving on to cardigans. I actually only made those two sweaters for myself this year. Moving on to cardigans, the first one that I want to share is this one. And this is the Honey Cardigan, also by Kutovakika, also found in her book Knit This. So this is a cardigan that is knit up in panels, and then it is sewn together. So essentially you knit the sleeves, the front two panels, as well as the back separately, and then you kind of all join it together using your sewing needle. It is knit in a half fisherman's rib stitch. There we go. Which is a really nice stitch, I find. It works up pretty quickly. So I made this in a needle size 4.5 with 3.5 for the ribbing, and I used the Drops Air wool, which is a alpaca blend. It is a blown yarn, and yeah, I made the size S, and it is a pretty cropped cardigan. I mean, with this one it's a little bit hard to kind of like fit it as you're making it because it is made in panels, so you don't really see it until it's like all sewn together, and then it is a little bit harder to like adjust the length and stuff. But it is, yeah, it worked up pretty quickly. The only thing that I have to criticize about this pattern are the sleeves, because they, as you can see here, are essentially one like singular width tube. There are 1 or 2 decreases, but if I were to make this pattern again, I would definitely incorporate more decreases in the sleeves, because the sleeves are just quite bulky around the top and quite narrow on the upper arm, which is not my personal preference, but yeah, that's just something that I would change next time. Other than that, like the pattern does call for including buttons at the front, but because this cardigan is already like pretty snug on me, like I said, I made a size small, and it is pretty snug and pretty cropped, I chose to actually opt out of the buttons and just kind of leave it open. The yarn that I use, the alpaca mix, is so warm, so I don't really see myself like ever, or I've worn this a bunch of times, put it that way, and I've never really found myself wanting to close the buttons because it was too chilly or something. So yeah, that is kind of my 2 cents about this cardigan. I really love wearing it. I love the color choice I made, and I would definitely recommend the pattern if you don't mind sewing things together, and with the caveat of doing more decreases across the sleeves. I think it's pretty visible here, like how little they decrease, I guess. Okay, the next cardigan that I made this year was not for myself, but it was a project for my grandma, and this is literally like what I call the longest whip of all times because she started this cardigan 30 years ago. So literally before I was born, she started making it, and then she just kind of put it aside and never continued it. And every time that I see or that I've seen her wool in the closet, I asked like, don't you want to finish it? And she's like, oh, I don't want to finish it. So I took it upon me to finish it for her to wear. So don't have it here with me because she has it, but I'll put in a picture of grandma's cardigan, I'm gonna call it. This was also a panel constructed cardigan because that's how they knitted most things in the olden days. They kind of made panels and sewed them together. And because the front panels were already partially made and the back panel was also, I think, partially made, like I just kind of picked it up from there and used my best knitting knowledge to kind of complete it from there without a pattern. It was an interesting experience because it almost felt like a challenge or like an exercise you would do at school, like to kind of have this half-started thing with no indication of like row counts, how big the button band is. You just kind of had to go with the flow, add in the buttonholes where necessary, like kind of go with what she had already done, because of course she couldn't remember because it was like 30 years ago. But I was able to complete it for her. The wool, I have no idea, it's forever old. It was super scratchy as well, but she didn't mind because she wears it over stuff. She wears it over other long sleeve garments. But we were both pretty happy with the finished project. So I think it's a really special cardigan for the both of us, I guess. So she gets to wear it now, and it is also like very nice and warm for her, but I don't have a size indication or a yarn indication or any gauge or anything. It was knitted on 5mm needles. That's the only thing I know, but I couldn't tell you much more about it. But that's another cardigan that I made. Then my kind of big crochet project of the year was also a cardigan, and it was this one right here. Oh, I am still so in love with this. This is, as you can see, a crochet granny square project that I started just kind of like when the winter was not over yet, but kind of the end was in sight, but not really. It was like February or something, and then you really still have like a good month or two here to go where we live. So I took this upon me because it kind of made me quite happy in the darker months. Like this pattern was just so nice. I did write a whole crochet pattern about it, which you can find in my Etsy store. I'll also link it down below. But this is just so fun. Like, I love this cardigan. I knitted this in Drops Cotton Light, which is a cotton polyester blend. I have kind of like a love-hate relationship with this yarn because it splits a lot when you crochet with it, but it does feel really nice when you wear it, and it also like it wears really nicely. There isn't much wear and tear. I think it's the polyester in it that just kind of makes it a little bit more durable. Yeah, and this took me a while. Like, I mean, making all these granny squares was a task. I solved the decrease in the sleeves by inserting these like triangles in the bottom, if that makes sense. So I made like these triangles to kind of like account for the decreases. So it's like a nice tubular like consistent decrease up until the cuff where the arms are. And yeah, overall I'm just still like, I love wearing this whenever I do, and I get a lot of compliments for it. So yeah, I wanted to share this one, although I guess it is mostly a knitting podcast. Just quickly for the specs, I made this in, like I said, Drops Cotton Light, and one square was 9.5 centimeters. That's kind of like the gauge I used. And I used a crochet hook size 3.5mm. Yeah, and yeah, so this is my Waiting for Spring cardigan, my pride and joy of this year. Alright, so moving on to the summer tops that I made this year, and I will say that I made a number of summer tops. Like, I made more summer tops than I made sweaters this year, which is kind of nice because I think came summer, I really didn't want to make more heavy sweaters because I was really excited that the weather was now a little bit warmer, and that I could also like knit for the summer, which, yeah, it was fun, and it just went so much faster because like sleeves take up a lot of time and space. Okay, so the first one I want to share with you is the Elisabeth blouse, and it is essentially like my short sleeve version of Petiteknit's Elisabeth blouse, which in the original is a long sleeve, but I knew I wanted to make like a short sleeve like linen item, so I opted for this pattern, realizing that like I don't have much yarn, so I'm just gonna go and make my sleeves until I run out. The way this works is a double folded collar that kind of like folds down. It has a V opening, which was like a new to me technique, so that was quite interesting. And then it goes down into raglan, and yeah, I cut off the sleeves here, or I cusset off the sleeves here, but the pattern actually calls for longer sleeves. I knitted this blouse in the linen yarn that I acquired in Riga on one of my trips there, from the wool shop Wolle. I unfortunately can't find the yarn anymore online, and it also doesn't have a name on it because it came on a spool. But it is 100% linen yarn, and I held a double, and I used 3.5 millimeter needles, and I actually ended up making a size L because my gauge was 25 stitches with this yarn on 3.5 millimeter needles, but the gauge in the pattern I believe is 23 stitches, so I had to size up 2 sizes in order to fit my size, and that worked perfectly. It fits me really well. I love wearing this in the summer, even touching it now. It has like a cold touch to it, which is lovely in the summer, and it's just like a lighter item. Yeah, in terms of the pattern, I will say that it was like a little bit more challenging, because linen is different to work with than wool, and this was my first time working in 100% linen yarn, so that took a little bit of getting used to. And then also in terms of this pattern, it just had like this front bit that like I knew I wanted to make really neat because that's where everyone looks at, and that was like a little bit challenging. It took a few tries, but nonetheless, like I'm very happy with how it turned out, and I'm also like really just like in love with this thing. Like I've worn this a lot, I've worn this to work, and yeah, I really want to make more in linen yarn now because of this piece. I've already bought the yarn for another Elisabeth blouse, hopefully in linen, so we shall see. Hopefully that will happen next year in 2025. The next summer top that I made this year was this one. Here we go, and this is the Fried top by Önling, and it is essentially this lace pattern here at the bottom. So it's a bottom up lace like feature that goes into stockinette stitch with an I-cord around the front and back opening and around the armholes as well. And yeah, this was a bit of a struggle, this pattern, because yeah, so the lace part at the bottom was interesting. I initially wanted to make this blouse in the linen yarn. So I started with the lace, and then I tried to block it because lace kind of comes out once you block it, and then you kind of really see the definition. But it just, you couldn't see any definition. Like it really was just, because I think the linen was just a little bit too stiff to kind of fall into the lace, to like let the lace live out, if that makes sense. So I unraveled literally like probably 2 weeks or at least a week's worth of work, which is always a sad moment. But then I really wanted to make this pattern because I was just really in awe of it. Like the picture looked amazing. I, by the way, got this pattern for free because I signed up for a newsletter from Önling. So then I figured out I have some drops alpaca lying around. So I took that, I held it double. This is actually unraveled drops alpaca, so the definition is really good for being unraveled yarn. I held it double, and then I tried my luck again with the lace, and it turned out a lot better. The only issue I have now is this is an alpaca like shirt, so I haven't worn it because it's so warm. Like I'll wear it and like in 10 minutes I have to take it off because it's just way too warm for the summer. So I'm thinking either I'll try to wear it like as a slip over in the winter, or I'll change the collar shape and then wear it as a slip over, because I think right now it's not really like a slip over style, but I think if I unravel it until here and made it like more of like a high neck collar, that could be really like effective. I might just give it another try this summer and maybe wear it on the cooler days where I just want to wear a tank top anyways, because I know I'll get the warmth from it. In terms of the pattern, like I said, I held the Drops Alpaca Double, and that gave me a gauge of 25 stitches in 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And I also made this in 3.5 millimeter needles, and I made the size L, but my measurements actually called for size M, but the pattern called for 23 stitches, so then I sized up and made size L. The pattern was not the easiest to follow, I have to say. The pattern had a lot of errors, and I think if you're someone who's like venturing into more, I'm gonna say like a little bit more complicated like garments, because this is all lace, so this was a lot of counting, a lot of stitch markers and so on and so forth, I actually wouldn't recommend this pattern because it has a lot of errors that really got me second guessing. And I've also gotten like a number of questions on it because I've shown this in a podcast, and a lot of people are kind of asking how like this pattern works. I mean, like, you can figure it out, so it's not like the end of the world, but I think if you're, I mean, retail or like normal price on the website, I think this pattern is like 7 or 8 euros. And I think if I'm paying that amount for a pattern, I expect it to be at least like tested or, you know, without that many errors. Maybe it was a translation thing, situation error, but nevertheless, I'm happy with how it turned out. It looks beautiful hanging like this, but I'm still kind of looking for how I'm gonna wear it, the functionality of it, because I think overall it is a beautiful top. It's also not exactly like my best color, I have to say, if you're into color theory, but that's a whole different topic. We're not gonna focus on that when talking about this pattern. The next summer top I want to share with you is the Audrey top by Petiteknit, which is this. Ta-da! I am very happy with this. So it's actually like a very like odd shape if you look at it like this, because it's just like super wide. Like this is really like really wide, especially when compared to the pretty narrow neckline. But as you can already see, it takes on this A shape, and that's exactly the shape it takes on when worn as well. This is a pattern by Petiteknit. It is called the Audrey top, and I made this pattern using Drops Cotton Light. My gauge was 20 stitches in 10 centimeters, and I made the size S, which was true to my measurements, and I didn't have to change any sizes because of my gauge. I made it on a 4 millimeter knitting needle, and yeah, so this pattern, very easy, like it literally, you cast on and then you do a bunch of stockinette and then you do an I-cord and then you kind of like do the front, do the back, do the I-cord straps. Yeah, and that's essentially it. So it is a very simple pattern. I will definitely recommend this for beginners, also like a good introduction to an I-cord if that's something you've never done before. And yeah, the only thing I will say is that like in terms of its shape, it's not the like most bra friendly, if that makes sense, because the straps really lie here, and of course normally when you're wearing a bra, like the straps kind of fall here, so you'll always see a strap unless you wear like a strapless bra, or yeah, you kind of tie it behind differently. I guess there's different techniques, but just something to keep in mind if that's something that's important to you. Yeah, otherwise this is like a really nice color standard top. I haven't worn this as much because I made it kind of late in the summer and then it got pretty cold pretty quickly. But yeah, overall I will definitely recommend this pattern. I think this shape is also very flattering to your upper body, like it really accentuates your shoulders, which is always nice to see. And yeah, not much more to say about this, I guess. This is the Audrey top by Petiteknit. Okay, and then the last summer top that I want to share with you is also my own design, and it's also a crochet top. So it looks like this, and it is essentially this crop top-ish, like wide straps, just kind of like a tube. And I made these granny squares, which I also designed by myself. And I essentially sewed them all together, created like a little underarm, like just kind of filled in, tied the squares here together just with some simple single crochets, and yeah, then kind of like sewed it all together, added some straps, and then now I have this summer top. The yarn I used here was Hobbii, the Hobbii Cotton 8/4. So it's a very thin cotton yarn, and I used a 3.5mm crochet hook. And yeah, I haven't also really worn this because it's quite like out there. It's like very different top, I guess. But I do hope to wear it like more next summer, and also like kind of actually wear it like for full days out and not just like a few hours here or there. It did take quite a while to make because, you know, making all these granny squares, like that was kind of a task because the yarn was also really thin. I didn't write a pattern for this because I wasn't really sure if I was gonna love it, but yeah, so far I'm still like, we'll see how much I wear this next year. I'm still happy I made it because I think granny squares is such a, like, for me that's very much like a palette cleanser. I can focus on something completely different, and once I know like my rhythm, I just kind of keep going. The thing I like the most about this top is the color combinations. I think the dark green with the beige and white is a very interesting one. I think that's kind of also the reason I made it, because I just had a bunch of like leftover yarn in these colors. But anyways, that's my last summer top, so I guess the granny square crochet top. I was also pretty close to making this into like a pillow or a pillowcase for it, which I might still do depending on how much I wear it next summer, but for now it's a top, so we'll see. I think with a bit of like editing or a bit of like mending, I can quite easily make this into a pillowcase, but we'll see. For now, I'll be wearing it in the summer. So those were kind of all the tops, cardigans, and sweaters that I made for women, or for myself realistically, except for the one for my grandmother. Now I want to share all the sweaters that I made for my partner. So these are all the men's items that I made. And I will say that with the men's clothing, it just takes so much longer because they're so much bigger, or at least like between me and my partner, there's quite a size difference. So I always I do notice them taking just like a lot more time. So the first one I want to share is this one. And here you can hopefully see it here. This is the pattern by Kutovakika in her book Knit This, and it is Yuki's sweater, it's called in the book. So it is this bottom up round yoke color work sweater, and I have the book, we looked at the pattern, and we just knew that like I was gonna make it for my partner because it was just such a beautiful design. So I let him help me choose the colors, and this is the combination that we came up with. Not really colors that like I think I would wear, but for him it really works. So the yarn that I used is Drops Air in 3 different colors. It's a light gray, a brown, and a yellow ochre orange. And yeah, I worked this, I think I worked the body with 6mm needles even. And then the sleeves I did in 5mm needles, or maybe 5.5 and 5. I didn't write it down, so I'm not sure. And then I also made a change to the pattern because this part of the color work was meant to be skulls, but that wasn't really like the style that my partner wanted. So then we decided to exchange it with snowflakes. So now we have like a snowflake and then a diamond. In retrospect, should have probably thought the snowflake through a little bit better because it didn't perfectly come out, but I think from afar it does look kind of like a snowflake. So that's kind of the pattern, how it turned out with the alterations that we made. Yeah, this sweater took a really long time because I then blocked it and then it grew so much. The Drops Air grows quite a bit in length. So I ended up cutting out around like 15 centimeters, or yeah, 10-15 centimeters from the bottom, but it is a bottom up sweater. So if you've ever tried to do that, you know that that's quite the complicated task. So I had both my grandmothers helping me, and I was able to catch every stitch, cut the bottom and then kind of knit on it from the other side. And if you look at it now, I don't think you can really tell. So I think it worked out quite well because it's really not noticeable now, but this literally was like cut off and then I just like added the ribbing and like a little bit here. So yeah, shortening a sweater when it's a bottom-up sweater is not the easiest. So I always recommend you do a gauge swatch and also measure like the length of it. But yeah, it's often just one of those things, then you try it on and then it turns out quite differently, and then yeah. Other than that, the gauge is 16 stitches, so like it's relatively big gauge, and I made a men's size M, so this is what it turned out. And like I said, I shortened the body quite a bit from what the pattern told me because it was just like too long, and otherwise he wouldn't have worn it. And the next thing I have to do now is I have to shorten the sleeves because they also grew a little bit with just wearing it a lot. And yeah, so now I'll have to cut those, but those are easier because it's like shoulder to sleeve construction, of course, right? So you can just unravel it a little bit and then add the ribbing again. Okay, so that is the Yuki sweater by Kutovakika, also found in her book Knit This. The next sweater I want to share is the Northland sweater by Petiteknit, which I can't share in person with you now because he currently is wearing it and he's not at home, so I can't show you at the moment. And the reason he's wearing it because he wears it all the time. So this is definitely the best pattern that I've made for my partner, and I think it's also like one of the nicest like men's fits that I've seen. So that's the Northland sweater by Petiteknit. We made this, or I made this in a cashmere merino blend from the same shop in Riga, Wolle, which is an amazing yarn. Similarly, I'm having trouble finding it online, but they do ship, so I'm gonna try my best again to find these yarns and link them down below because I can only recommend them. They definitely ship to Europe. I'm not really sure how the shipping to North America works, but if you can get a hand on this yarn, I can only recommend it. Yeah, so the gauge of the sweater was also, so the gauge of the sweater was 17 stitches and I made it on 4.5mm needles, and I also made him a size M. This sweater is so beautiful, like the way the shoulder is constructed down is amazing. It was a pattern that was really easy to follow. I would say this is a really beginner friendly pattern. Everything is like written out, everything is explained perfectly, and that's exactly like, oh, everything about the sweater just worked out. So I think that's always really nice. And now he wears it like all the time. It's like his favorite sweater, which is lovely to see that it's like something that I made for him. Okay, the next item that's like, it's essentially finished. So I'm including it in here. I'm just waiting for like one more skein of yarn to be delivered here so I can actually finish it. But it is this one. So it is the Petiteknit Zipper Sweater Light. And as you can see, I ran out of yarn literally like halfway through, or 2/3 of the way even through the cuff on the last sleeve. So instead of trying to play a game of yarn chicken, I just kind of bit the bullet and bought another skein, because also I need to like make a little thing like inlay here for the zipper to go into, so it's fine. I thought about it, I just ordered it more. But the yarn, speaking of, that I used for this is the Blue Face Leicester Fleece, and I made it in the color Fossil, so it's like this medium color gray, I would say. Again, the pattern, wonderful. It's a double folded collar, worked top down with a raglan shoulder. And then it's really like this kind of like round shape, boxy zipper sweater design. The only alteration I made is that I made the ribbing with a twisted purl stitch. So I thought about a twisted knit, but I was like, you know what? I want to try a twisted purl and just see how that turns out. So on the inside, it looks like a twisted rib, but on the outside, it's a twisted, like it looks, I guess, more like ribbed. So it was like a minor change, I guess, I made to the pattern, but otherwise it should be done really soon. But I still wanted to include it here because who knows when this yarn is going to get here. Yeah, also made a size M for him in this. Can only recommend the pattern. It's, I think, what the main like thing about this sweater is I'm gonna make one for myself, also using the men's pattern because I think it's pretty much the same from what I read online. And I already ordered that yarn too, so pretty excited about this one. Okay, so those were my 12 tops or sweaters that I knitted in 2024. Now we're gonna move on to the accessories that I made. So in total, like I said, I made 16 different accessories, and I'm also gonna group them. So we're gonna start with hats. The first one I actually also can't show you because my grandma is currently using / borrowing it, and that is my crocheted summer hat in the many fun colors that the yarn offers. The yarn I use is Strumpf's Cotton Light, and this is a really basic crocheted bucket hat. I'll put in a picture. I love this thing for its colors. I did make this and then also realized that it's probably not something that I'm gonna wear a lot, just because I'm not really like a bucket hat person in the summer, if that makes sense. But I have worn it a bunch of times, and I think when my grandma no longer uses it, I will take it back so I can wear it again and become a bucket hat person in the summer. So that's my crocheted striped summer hat in Strumpf's Cotton Light. I think I used a 3.5mm needle as well, and I just freehanded it. I didn't use a pattern, I just kind of like went with the flow. The next beanie I want to share is one that like I'm not the biggest fan of, but like I've shown it on here before and people are always like, oh, it looks so good, but I'm still like, I don't wear it. So this is the Lighthouse beanie by Kutovakika, also in her book Knit This. I've knit a lot of things from her book this year, can you tell? But I just like a lot of the things, so why not? But this is the Lighthouse beanie. I made it in Drops Air and I used, I think, 3.5mm needles, so I made it quite tight gauge. I think the gauge was around 20 or 21 stitches. And it's essentially this hat that's like folded inwards. It's a tube, and then you have to kind of like fold it into itself and then fold it again so you get the brim, and then you wear it, and then it looks like this. And I don't know, there's something about this hat that just makes me not want to wear it. I don't think it's a pattern issue. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my yarn choice. Maybe I didn't make the brim long enough. But yeah, I will say that this pattern, like, you shouldn't underestimate how long it takes because the tube is really long. Like, this is basically a whole sleeve of a sweater worth of like yarn. It did take me quite a while. I also made this on holiday when it was really cold out and I just wanted to wear it, so I just wanted to get it done, but it just kept going and going and going. Overall, I don't know what it is. I'm also like planning on wearing it, but then I never do. I don't know, maybe I'll just wear it and see how I feel. I mean, I've worn it once and like the yarn is also like a little bit itchy, so the Drops Cotton Light, the Drops Air, if you're a little bit sensitive, it is a bit itchy, like especially like on the forehead after a few hours or a little bit longer wearing this. But yeah, let me know what you think. I don't know. I don't even think it's a pattern problem. I think it's just a me problem with this thing. But I'll give it a few more chances. So we'll see. Now it's like the depth of winter. We have quite some snow in the mountains, so it's good time to wear it, or try wearing it, I guess. The next one is another hat that I made for my partner. This is essentially just a basic brioche stitch hat. I made this in the same yarn as the fried top, so it's 2 strands of Drops alpaca held together, and yeah, then I just brioche stitched like a tube around this long in the round, and then tied it all together at the top. I didn't do any decreases or anything. I just wanted to keep it nice and simple. And it looks like this. And he wears this thing all the time as well, so that's really nice. I couldn't even like tell you what needles I used for it because I made it right at the beginning of the year. But I think it looks really nice. I think brioche stitch is always just nice for hats. The only thing, if you're gonna make a hat with brioche stitch, do your gauge swatch. It grows so much. So yeah, something just to keep in mind. I think any yarn you use brioche stitch on, it's gonna expand like at least like 1.25 fold. Okay, but that is the brioche stitch hat. He forgot to take it, so I can show it to you. Okay, then the next beanie that I made was kind of like on a whim. I bought a knitting machine this year and then I made a beanie out of it. So I bought the Centro, I think it was like 52 or 51 pin knitting machine. I was doing some research online and I thought, okay, this knitting machine, like, it just sounds very intriguing. I really want to try one and I'll make lots of stuff out of it. I got it, and then I realized that the only thing that you can really make out of it is beanies, or at least in my eyes. I know that there's people out there making all different things with knitting machines and it's very intricate and it's very like, that's great. But I made a beanie out of it and I can't show it to you because we keep it in the car as like an emergency beanie if it's cold. But then, yeah, I made it, and it was also like an infolded, like literally just a tube folded into itself, tied at the top, tied at the bottom, because you can't do decreases, you can't really, like, I didn't realize how little versatile a knitting machine was basically. Ended up sending the knitting machine back, did not like enjoy using it. I think I realized that the thing I love about knitting is the thing that you do with your hands, like the dexterity about it, like the different yarns, the different like techniques. And I think by just winding like a handle for like 20 minutes, I didn't get the same enjoyment out of it. So I ended up sending it back, but I did make a beanie out of it. So I wanted to include it in here. Yeah, not much more to say about that one. I also made it out of Drops Air because that's like the one gauge like that I was able to use. The next one I can't show you is a dog hood. So I made this out of Tom Daly's knitting book, and yeah, I made a dog hood for my brother's dog, so he's gonna get that pretty soon. It is a gift and this is obviously just like a fun item that I kind of made. I made it out of Drops Cotton Light on, I believe it was 3.5mm needles, and it's like this cute little hood for a dog. I mean, my brother's dog is a pug, so it's very cute. Kind of just fits the whole thing. But I guess it's a hat, so I wanted to include it in here. Okay, so the next item I made was another ribbed hat. And it looks like this. So I guess you have to fold up the rib double at the bottom. And I made this like with a hat that I already had like as the template without like a pattern. And yeah, it kind of turned out quite nice. It is like a men's hat, so I guess that's why this is the style. And yeah, it turned out similar, but like not as thick and fluffy as I was hoping for it to be. After blocking it, it like kind of like even out quite a bit. The yarn I used was the Malabrigo Arroyo yarn, and I made this in 3.5mm needles. I've made 2 of these. My version of this I didn't make this year, so I'm not including it here, but I wear my version of this all the time. I love my ribbed hat. It does include decreases. I think it looks like it has quite a neat like finish at the top. And yeah, it's a superwash merino yarn, so it's pretty like very nice to the touch, not scratchy at all. And yeah, this is also going to be a gift this Christmas. Okay, so I've had to turn on my lights because the sun is setting, because we are in like the depth of winter. But I'm sure you can still see my items, and I've already showed my like main big ones. So the next category that I want to include here are socks. So I had a very long sock hiatus because I was just like not ready to, I don't know, make more socks. I made a lot of socks like previous years, and it was just kind of like second nature to me. Like I always made socks without a pattern. I always just kind of like did my own thing. But now I came back to my socks because I wanted to make a present for my brother as well. So the socks I made for him were the vanilla socks. Here I will link the pattern below. It is a free pattern, and I use the Hobbii sock yarn. Yeah, they're literally, what the name is a vanilla pair of socks, nothing special, a German short row heel, and then essentially like ribbing at the top, and then the joining together at the bottom. I like these socks because it taught me new techniques. So I had never really made German short row heels in this way before, so that was nice. And also the Kitchener stitch at the front, so joining at the toe was also new, and then I kind of like implemented those into the next socks I made. So I still enjoyed it. It was like a pretty like nice project to take. I was traveling at the time, and yeah, I'll put in a picture of the socks here as well. But yeah, not much to say about a vanilla sock pattern, as it already implies in the name. Okay, then I was really motivated to make my own sock pattern. So I did just that, and then the outcome were these, and I am so obsessed with these. They're my Halloween pumpkin socks. I mean, There are two of them. The other one's here. So it's essentially these socks with collarwork at the top, which are these cute little pumpkins. Oh, and then like an orange heel and then a orange toe box as well. So in these socks, I then like applied or implemented the new things I learned. So this is what I meant with the Kitchener stitch finishing at the top. See how it kind of like looks like it's all like together. And then I also did the short row, the German short row heel, because yeah, I just kind of like the way it flows when you're making the sock. Yeah, these I designed myself. I also made a YouTube video as like a tutorial, and then I also made the whole pattern, published it on my Etsy. So I'm really happy with these because they're just so cute and so fun, and like the little pumpkins are all like all smiley here. I made this in the Regia sock wool by Schachenmeier, but I also mixed it with some of the Opal sock wool. I essentially was ordering or was buying sock wool on like the shop I was at, and then the online shop I was ordering from, they had like a bunch of different companies, but like they're all pretty combinable sock wools if you're kind of within the same gauge. So that was kind of nice and easy. And yeah, I just think they're so cute with the little pumpkins at the top. It's like a fun project. It did take me like quite a while to figure out the color work, just because like the rows and, you know, making sure like the set of the color work like fits into the like gauge or the stitches that you cast on. But yeah, these are my pumpkin Halloween socks that I designed myself, and I have to say like I'm actually quite proud of these because I think they turn out really nice. Then another pair of socks that I'm actually currently in the process, so this is my only like work in progress other than the sweater I showed, are the Boylan socks. I really wanted to include them just because I found them so gorgeous. So this is where I'm at. These are part of the 52 weeks of socks book from the 52 week series. I have the book as like an online version, so yeah, I'm just kind of like, this is like my side project. I'll probably continue them soon because I'm traveling again, and I always like to take a pair of socks when traveling just because it's a little bit more manageable. Yeah, so these are the Boylan socks from that book in the same sock yarn. So it's also the Regia Schachenmeier yarn, the typical sock yarn that comes in the 100-gram balls. So I made 3 pairs of mittens this year, one of which I actually forgot, so I guess I made 17 accessories in total. So the first ones I want to share are the lollipop mittens. Similarly, I made them for my brother. I don't even remember if I took a picture of them, to be honest, but they're your basic mittens. I didn't make them in the colors that are suggested in the book. The pattern I used was the lollipop mittens by Kutovakika, also in her book Knit This, you guessed it. But I just made them in a plain brown in Drops Air yarn, and yeah, they turned out quite nice and fluffy, and I hope that he will enjoy wearing them. The next mittens that I actually just finished like last week are the Elsa mittens. So this is what they look like. These 2 beautiful mittens. The stitch definition I think is so nice. These are the Elsa mittens, and they're also found in the book 52 Weeks of Easy Knits. So I own that book, and it's essentially like a collection of all different patterns from all different designers. And yeah, these ones I made in the Malabrigo Arroyo yarn as well. These are also going to be gifted this Christmas, but if I have time, I'll actually make a pair for myself because I'm just really in love with like, I think the stitch definition is so beautiful, and it really wasn't hard at all. Like it's literally just knits and purls, like 2 2 2 2, and then the top is like this kind of like this pointed top here with like also just decreases, and then some Kitchener stitch to kind of join them at the top. So I think it's just a very pretty, effective, and yet simple pattern to make. And I think for gloves, like they didn't take me long at all. They take me, maybe one glove took me like less than a day to finish. I think that's always really nice. Yeah, so Elsa mittens, I can definitely recommend. The pattern, wonderful, and I think they turned out really well as well. Then the gloves that I almost forgot, because these, I literally remember making these on the 1st of January. And these are the Sprinklify mittens by Kutovakika. So these are also in her book, Knit This. And they're essentially these like 3 color work mittens, and just like a lot of detailing. I will say these were not the easiest to make. just because like 3 strands of color work, 1 stitch each. It's a lot going on, and it's like for the majority of the glove. And yeah, I actually held one of the yarns with mohair, so like I was working with like 4 different yarns, which is just like that's a lot. But I'm so happy with how they turned out. I think they're so fun, like the color, like oh, it's so beautiful, and the little love hearts at the top as well. I actually just altered this one because I like the tip was on the wrong way, like it was a little bit twisted, and it was driving me crazy every single day because I wear these like almost every day. So I unraveled it a few weeks ago and redid it. I'm very happy that I did because now I'm like very satisfied with these. In terms of the pattern though, like I did have to make them a lot wider than what they were in the pattern, so they did take me a long time to figure that out. I also did some like just extra stitches, I think is what I ended up doing, because the pattern, like it was just because your hand is like obviously a lot wider here than it is here, and I feel like maybe my hands are just large, but like I did not fit into these gloves at first. Unraveled the whole thing, remade it wider, and now they fit just fine. Yeah, so those are my Sprinklify mittens by Kutovakika. Okay, and then to finish this video off, and I thank you if you're still around, still watching, because I think it's quite long at this point. I have 4 more items that I quickly want to show you that are kind of like in my miscellaneous category that I've made. So the first one in this category is my mini scarf, or I guess it's a Sophie scarf, but I didn't use a Sophie scarf pattern. And I made it in the Malabrigo Machita in the color Wales Road. I'll put in a picture because again, my grandma has hijacked this item as well. She really liked it, so I said, you know what? This is gonna be your Christmas present and keep it. Because of course I can always make myself another one. I have enough yarn left, and like, if it makes her happy, that makes me happy. But I've actually just casted on another one. With the Malabrigo Arroyo yarn as a quick last minute Christmas gift, and I know I'll finish it, although I'm only here, but like I have a bunch of traveling and some time, so I'll be able to finish this one. Yeah, this is your standard like mini scarf pattern with the I-cord around the edge and just garter stitch in the middle, so it kind of like looks like this. So I really enjoyed wearing my mini scarf until I didn't have it anymore. So I know I'll be making myself another one as well, but I wanted to include it in here because I didn't make it this year, although it is no longer here. The next item that I made, I also have to include a picture. So it is the chevron baby blanket I made just for someone who's having a baby, and I felt like crocheting again after a lot of knitting, so I made a baby blanket, and the yarn I used was Drops Cotton Light. I didn't follow a pattern for this, I just did a simple chevron stitch and then made a nice edge around it, I guess. So yeah. Okay, so then the next item is this crochet plastic bag, the pattern is called. So it is essentially this like plastic bag style, but it's like a bag, I guess, or like it's a crocheted bag. So I keep like just cables and stuff in here now, but yeah, the pattern I used was a YouTube video that was in Korean. I will link it here, but I couldn't tell you the designer's name or what the pattern is called. In English, it's a crochet plastic bag. So this is the outcome, and it's literally just like yeah, double crochets and then like a chain in between. So it was a really simple and also very quick project to make. So the last item that I want to share with you today is this basket that I made. And this one I was also super excited about and happy with, because this is a recycled bedsheet that I held together, oops, with Drops Cotton Light. So you can kind of like see here like the white and the blue, that's Drops Cotton Light mixed in with it, just to give it a little bit more sturdiness, the bag. And then I made like a little handle on it, and now it actually perfectly fits our sheet music. So in this basket, our sheet music just can stand alone, and it's really nice and nifty and kind of like slides next to our couch. So it's a very like practical item I made that is also recycled. So yeah, just a little note at the end about my recycled bedsheet basket, I think I'm gonna call it. I didn't follow a pattern. I also didn't really have an idea of like how thin to cut the bedsheet, but I think everything worked out quite well. And yeah, it is also a very frequently used item. Alright, so thank you so much for watching all my items that I knitted and I guess crocheted in 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video. I do have a lot of like new plans for 2025. Yeah, I'm just one of those people who gets inspired by a lot of patterns, by a lot of things that other people talk about, post online, make videos about, and so on and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to just like getting more into my garment making. Hopefully also like designing maybe another crochet cardigan is kind of like what I'm inspired to do at the moment, but also just seeing kind of like where the flow takes me and like where, you know, what I get inspired by, what patterns I want to make next, and so on and so forth. So if you're still around, thank you so much for watching this quite lengthy video. If you liked it, I'd love for you to stick around and subscribe. Leave your comments down below and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care. Bye.